Confession is powerful. It frees the heart, breaks the silence, and brings us closer to healing. Broken heart, if stories like this move you, subscribe to Tears and Truth for more real, emotional journeys that echo our deepest struggles and unspoken truths. When the story begins, I was always the one who held everything together. From the time I was a little girl growing up in a crowded two-bedroom apartment in Mumbai, to raising 3 children in a quiet suburban home in New Jersey, caring for others was stitched into my very identity. My name is Asha Mehta. I'm 59 years old, a retired nurse, and for most of my life, I've been the one everyone turned to. In India, I was the one who helped raise my younger siblings while my mother worked long hours stitching clothes. I was 11 when I learned how to make dal and rice, change diapers, and comfort a crying baby. When I moved to the US after marrying Rajiv, an engineer I met through an arranged setup, I brought that same sense of duty with me. I put my dreams on hold for the sake of our family. I wanted to become a doctor, but we couldn't afford both Rajiv's master's degree and mine. So I studied nursing instead, working night shifts while taking care of our 3 children during the day. Diapers, dinner, homework, and bills. My life was a carousel of tasks, sacrifices, and deep, unspoken love. I never once asked, "What about me?" When my in-laws came to live with us, I welcomed them with open arms. My mother-in-law was a tough woman. She criticized my cooking, my parenting, even the way I kept our house. But I never snapped back. I kept my head down and heart open. I was the planner of birthdays, the nurse during flu season, the emotional anchor during tough exams and breakups. I was there when my son Rahul got into Stanford, when my daughter Priya had her first heartbreak, when Rajiv's startup failed, and when it finally succeeded. I made sure everyone had what they needed, even if it meant I had nothing left for myself. But something shifted after the pandemic. It was subtle at first. A missed call here, a short reply there. My children grew up, moved out, got busy. Priya moved to Austin for work, Rahul stayed in California, and little Anika, my youngest, was finishing med school in Boston. Rajiv? He had thrown himself into his tech consultancy work and spent most days on Zoom or at some conference in another state. I didn't mind at first. I understood. Life moves on. Kids grow up. People get busy. But then came my 59th birthday. I waited all day. I had even cooked a full meal, paneer butter masala, rice, and kheer, just in case someone surprised me. At 6 p.m., I put on a sari. I lit a candle. I sat at the table. I stared at the door. 9:01 came. 9:01 called. Not even a text until 10:43 p.m. from Rahul that said, "Happy birthday, Mom. Love you. Sorry, crazy day." That night, something broke inside me. Not from anger, not even sadness, but from exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that isn't about your body, it's about your soul. It's when you've poured yourself into others for decades, only to find yourself empty, alone, and quietly wondering, was I ever seen or just used? And so my confession begins, not as a cry for pity, but as a story I need to tell. Because if even one other woman out there hears this and whispers, "Me too," then perhaps it was worth telling. The morning after my birthday, I woke up with swollen eyes and a bitter taste in my mouth. Not from anything I ate, but from the silence I had swallowed the night before. I didn't tell Rajiv how forgotten I felt. What was the point? He would have patted my shoulder, mumbled something about work stress, and asked if I had taken my blood pressure meds. That was his love language now. Clinical, distracted, routine. He hadn't remembered either. Not even a card. I walked through our spacious house, the one I had dreamed of when we were renting a 1-bedroom in Queens, with its granite countertops and polished floors, and it echoed in all the worst ways. Every photo frame on the wall stared back at me. Birthdays, graduations, vacations, all the moments I had worked so hard to create. Now, they were just reminders of people who no longer called. That weekend, I texted our family group chat. Thinking of cooking biryani Sunday. Would love to catch up. Zoom call. Seen by everyone. No replies. By Sunday night, I found myself at the dinner table again. Another full plate across from mine. Another empty chair. I kept imagining voices. Rahul saying, "Pass the raita." Mom. Priya laughing. Anika talking a mile a minute about a patient case. But the only sound was the ticking of the wall clock, louder than it had ever been. It wasn't just birthdays. It was everything. No one asked how I was sleeping. I wasn't. No one asked if I'd gone to the doctor for my aching knees. I hadn't. No one asked if I was okay. I wasn't. It hit me one evening, about a month later, while I was folding laundry. I was watching a Bollywood movie rerun in the background, the kind with a mother who sacrifices everything for her family and is finally appreciated in the end. But real life wasn't a Bollywood script. There was no dramatic reunion, no child running in the rain, shouting "Ma!" There was just laundry. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I picked up the phone and called my childhood friend, Rekha. We hadn't spoken in almost a decade, but she picked up after 2 rings like nothing had changed. "Asha." Her voice cracked. "Is everything okay?" And for the first time in a long time, I said the truth. "No, I'm not okay." What followed was a flood. I told her about the birthday, the silence, the feeling of being used up, discarded, invisible. She didn't offer advice. She didn't tell me to stay strong. She just listened. And sometimes that's everything. When we finally hung up, Rekha said, "Come visit me in Atlanta. You need a break." A break? The idea seemed absurd. Who would cook for Rajiv? Who would keep the house in order? But then it struck me. Maybe it didn't matter anymore. That night, I stood in front of the mirror and asked the woman staring back, "Who are you if you're not their caretaker?" And I didn't have an answer. But I wanted to find one. The flight to Atlanta was my first solo trip in over 30 years. I didn't tell anyone I was going. Not Rajiv, not the kids. I left a note on the fridge that read, "Gone for a short visit. Will call you soon. Asha." For once, I didn't pack snacks for someone else. I didn't remind anyone to take their medicines. I just zipped up my small suitcase, called a cab, and boarded a flight with nothing but my thoughts and a tangle of emotions I could no longer bury. Rekha greeted me at the airport with a hug that smelled of sandalwood and old friendship. She looked almost the same. Grayer hair, yes, and reading glasses perched on her head. But her eyes held the same warmth I remembered from school. She lived in a cozy bungalow in a quiet Atlanta neighborhood, where magnolia trees shaded the sidewalks and neighbors waved at strangers. Her house was filled with books, houseplants, and the calming smell of masala chai brewing on the stove. "You're not just here to visit me, Asha," Rekha said that first night. "You're here to remember who you are." I scoffed. "Who I was, you mean?" "No," she said gently. "Who you still are. Beneath the mother, the wife, the caretaker, the woman, the soul." It was strange at first, having time, having space. I slept in. I went on long morning walks with Rekha, where the only voices were birdsong and our own laughter. I read books that had nothing to do with parenting or medicine. I ate without cooking. I sat in silence without guilt. And slowly, I started to remember that I loved sketching. I used to draw faces as a girl, neighbors, actors, even deities. Rekha had kept one of my old sketches in a folder. When she showed it to me, I cried. It was a portrait of my late mother, eyes kind and tired. "I forgot I even made this," I whispered. "You forgot a lot of beautiful things," she said. "Time to remember." So I picked up a pencil again. The lines were shaky at first, but familiar. And with every sketch, I reclaimed a part of myself. We went to local art markets. We danced to old Hindi songs in her living room. We had spicy street food and talked until midnight. I told her about the loneliness, the ache that no one else could see. And Rekha, bless her, never once told me to just be grateful like others had. She validated my grief. She called it what it was: neglect, emotional neglect. "You gave them everything," she said, "but now it's time to give something to yourself." Her words rang in my ears every night. After a week, I finally called Rajiv. "Where are you?" he asked, voice tight. "I told you. Visiting Rekha," I replied. "You didn't say how long. What about dinner, the house?" And just like that, I felt that old tug. The guilt, the need to shrink myself, to apologize. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "Dinner will figure itself out. So will the house." I needed a break. There was silence, then a sigh. The kids were worried. But were they really? "Funny," I replied. "Not one of them has called." Another silence. And then, for the first time in years, I ended the call without guilt. I wasn't angry. Just done. Done waiting for love to be returned in equal measure. Done begging for attention I deserved. Done shrinking. That night, I stared at the ceiling fan, Rekha snoring gently across the hallway, and I whispered to myself, "I am not just what I do for others." I didn't know what came next, but I knew it had to begin with me. I stayed in Atlanta for 2 more weeks. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Something magical happens when a woman stops showing up for everyone else. At first, the world gets confused, then angry, then quiet. And in that silence, she hears her own voice again. That I started to feel lighter. Not just emotionally, but physically. My joints didn't ache as much. My sleep improved. I laughed, honest belly laughs, at things that would have once barely made me smile. Rekha and I even tried a painting class at a nearby community center. And I surprised myself with a watercolor of 2 birds flying in opposite directions. Symbolic. Rekha asked with a wink that I just smiled. On the 15th day, I got a call from Anika. "Mom, where are you?" she asked. "Dad said you just left." "I did," I replied calmly. "But you didn't say anything." "Neither did you," I said. "Not on my birthday. Not for weeks. No calls. No texts." There was a pause. "I'm sorry," she finally whispered. "I didn't realize." "No one does," I said, "until the one who always shows up doesn't." She cried. She apologized. But her tears didn't wash away the years of loneliness I had silently swallowed. Still, I appreciated the call. She meant it. She was young, busy, like I had once been. But now, I wasn't just someone's mother. I was Asha. And Asha had needs, too. When I finally returned to New Jersey, something had shifted. Not in them. In me. I didn't rush to cook dinner the moment I landed. I didn't restock the fridge. I unpacked slowly, put on soft music, and made myself a cup of ginger tea. Rajiv walked in from his office around 6 p.m. and looked surprised to see me sitting on the sofa with a sketch pad. "You're back," he said, uncertain. "I am." He hesitated. "Did you have a good time?" I did, I said. A really good time. Then, silence. Not awkward, just different. Later that evening, I sat with Rajiv and told him everything. About the silence, the pain, the invisible labor of being the emotional glue for everyone. I told him I wasn't going to do it anymore. Not alone. I'll still love you all, I said. But I won't sacrifice myself to keep this family running on traditions that no one even respects anymore. He looked stunned. Why didn't you say something earlier? Because I was too busy holding everyone else together. And I didn't realize how broken I was until I left. In the weeks that followed, small changes happened. Rajiv started checking in more, asking how I felt, offering to help cook. The kids called more often, not out of obligation, but because they sensed a boundary had been drawn. I wasn't just waiting for them anymore. I signed up for a local art group. I started volunteering twice a week at a women's shelter, listening to stories just like mine. And for the first time in decades, I looked at the mirror and saw someone I liked. Not because she was useful, but because she was whole. I had been waiting my whole life for someone to put me first. Now I realized it had to be me. Some months have passed since I came back from Atlanta. The seasons changed. The garden I once kept just for show is now blooming with flowers I chose. Not for anyone else's eyes, but for mine. Marigolds, hibiscus, and a soft lavender bush I planted right outside my bedroom window. I open it every morning and breathe in the scent, like a daily reminder. You're allowed to bloom too. The family still exists. Rajiv is still Rajiv, quiet, routine-driven, but now he asks if I want to walk with him in the evenings. Sometimes we do. Sometimes I say no. And that's okay. The children call more often, but I've stopped keeping score. I've learned not to measure my worth by their attention. One Sunday morning, I received a voice message from Rahul. Hey Mom, I've been thinking a lot lately. You always made our home feel like a sanctuary. I'm sorry I didn't see what that cost you. I love you, I cried. Not out of sadness this time, but out of recognition, of finally being seen. Still, this isn't a story about a magical ending where everyone changed and the mother was worshipped. No, this is a story about a woman who changed herself. I go to therapy now. Virtual sessions with an Indian American woman who understands both my culture and my silence. She tells me that emotional labor is real, that it's okay to want rest, to want appreciation, to have needs that aren't selfish, but human. I've reconnected with Rekha weekly over video calls. We talk about silly things, big things, and sometimes we just sit together in silence, watching each other sketch. Recently, I submitted one of my watercolors. A woman standing in the rain, her face tilted toward the sky, to a local exhibition that I got selected. When I walked into the gallery and saw my name on that little white card under the painting, Asha Patel, something bloomed inside me that I didn't even realize had been waiting all these years. Validation, recognition, identity. Not as Mom, not as Mrs. Rajiv Patel, just Asha. That night, I treated myself to dinner at a quiet restaurant. I sat by the window, sipping masala chai, smiling at nothing in particular. An older woman at the next table leaned over and asked, "Are you celebrating something?" I looked at her, smiled, and said, "Yes, myself." Because the truth is, I spent decades serving everyone else, feeding them, dressing them, fixing them, holding space for their joy and their pain. But when I needed someone, the room went quiet. So I left that room. I built my own. And if someone knocks now, they're welcome to enter, but only if they come with love, with respect, and with time. Because I've realized that I'm not an afterthought, not a background character, not a vessel. I am a woman, a soul, a story. And finally, I matter. This is my confession.to every woman who gave until she had nothing left. You don't have to wait for someone to save you. You are allowed to save yourself. My name is Asha. And for the first time in my life, I am no longer just taking care of everyone else. I am taking care of me.